Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite Warlock here, practicing Necromancer. And today I kind of want to talk to you and kind of update what's been on over the last week since my last video, and some up to date stuff. And today, I was kind of reflecting this morning over last night's experience. I performed a blood rite, a pact with a spirit, and it was interesting because of the fact that afterwards I got this overwhelming need to go to, just to get out and kind of stretch my legs, go for a walk, and I ended up spending a couple hours in the cemetery, and it was interesting because of the fact that while I was doing this, I began observing things. You have the physical law and then you have the spiritual law, and both are not always aligned. But it is kind of cool because when you look at certain focal points within a cemetery, like say the female aspects of power, when it comes to say four connected roadways or four connected um, crossroads, if you wish, where compared to the three, which is male. It's very powerful. So I was in the cemetery last night. I went to my throne that I established there, and I was really drawn a couple of years ago to this one section. This one section, it was kind of cool because you had this big pillar, and you had like a couple, like four graves, stones that were right down by the steps, and then you had this walkway that it's kind of like a stone wall, so it kind of reminded me of a fort. It kind of reminded me of the castle type thing, and so it had this little steps, like two steps, and you're on this little walkway, and I kind of so drawn to this location that I keep going back there to that one location. So I was sitting there and I was just talking to the spirits, calling on the main body, the ruling body of that cemetery, and just speaking my mind and the plans that I got. I even petitioned them and said, "Hey, if is this what you still want from me? Do you still want me to be your grave lord? Do you still want me to be in your cemetery?" You know, kind of just reaffirming that this is my cemetery, where I need to be, because the spirits, they appoint you. It's not the other way around. So, in a necromantic sense, this is something that I've been doing. So last night I ended up doing this, and I walked around the cemetery, and this this observation really started when I was walking towards it, and it was funny because I started seeing flashes of light inside the cemetery, and I thought, okay, maybe somebody's in there, you know, because people do and have been known to walk in there and to walk around at night. So I mean, there's really um no surprise there, except for there was nobody there, and I was the only one in there, and it was kind of cool because as I'm walking towards the gate, I noticed from the left to the center there was these flashes of light. And the cemetery was so dark. It was like somebody had just put a blanket of darkness over it. And I really it was kind of like cool, Wonder how I'm gonna see, in the dark, So I ended up going in there, and like I said, I kind of walked around. At first I just sat down at this focal point, the female focal point there, and even laid down right there and was talking to the spirits and just looking up at the stars, the astronomy aspects of it, the planetary. and kind of just focused my senses and started chanting. And then I started walking around and ended up at my throne, ended up going to the mail section and walked amongst the graves. And I started noticing a lot of different applications here. Number one, it wasn't just, it was like this extra darkness, like I said, like a blanket had been put over the graveyard. But I started noticing shades. And as I'm sitting there talking to the ruling body, embodiment of spirits there, the ruling body, and was kind of making plans for this upcoming black fast, this fasting time where I normally go an entire month every single night to the cemetery and everything. It was kind of cool because I was thinking, I need to put pennies by the gate. I need to put my seal here. I need to do this and I need to do that. And I had like two things that I thought about doing. But I also was talking to them about what was going down and things that I noticed yesterday. And it was interesting because even this morning I woke up to a couple of messages. And my apprentice ended up calling me and we ended up discussing this. And it was interesting because I think a lot of people tend to overthink things. They tend to allow emotion to cloud their judgment, and they forget that as practitioners, we have an obligation to work on control. That means have an objective mind when it comes to physical and spiritual applications. Because of the amount of knowledge and the power that we have as sorcerers and sorceresses, we can do a lot of damage, especially if we allow our emotions to go unchecked. And so one of the topics was yesterday on social media, and it was interesting because I shared it to an individual, and I also shared it to my main Facebook page because it is a infringement of the legal system, on the from a legal perspective. But at the same time, you kind of have to go through, as I was telling my apprentice, you kind of have to look at actions and words. You know, when you look at things like what the spirits show you, there's you have to look at it from a folkloric perspective. You have to look at it from a historical perspective, and you have to look at it from you know a spiritual perspective. Okay, so you got like three different aspects you got to look at, and so on this aspect, let's look at the Knights of Templar. The Knights of Templar lived by a creed. It started out as a small band of knights who took an oath to protect pilgrims on the road to the Holy Land. Okay, and they literally got a lot of wealth and power, and they became a political threat to Europe, to the European king. They answered only to the church, which was kind of cool, which was kind of interesting in itself as a ruling body. But they were demonized by the king and a current cardinal, a bishop. And it was said that they got their vast power through acts of homosexual activity, through worshiping devils and demons such as Baphomet. And even in that case, if we go into the Hashshashin, which the founder of this order was originally a Shem priest who had been run out of Giza. He formed this through a psychological perspective. Okay. On one hand, this is a group of holy men, devout holy men. But on the other hand, they were highly trained in combat, just like the Knights of Templar. And the ironic part is they were both founded around the same time. I mean, you go into later you know, secret societies like the the Skull and Crossbones of today. A lot of U.S. presidents were said to come from this group. You go into Wiccan and pagan covens; they have their own creeds, regulations, and laws. You know, you go into Masonic or Masonry; they have their own statutes, their own creeds. It's like a blood oath. Okay, so there is a lot of historical evidence of organizations that are highly recognized and published as religious foundations that have published works like, say, the Egyptian Book of the Dead or the Green Emerald, for an example, that went hand in hand with the Shem priesthood and the rites that they performed to Anubis and to Isis and so forth. Okay, when they were doing all the embalming and the mummification process, even their different levels of their priesthood, who, how should I say this, had their own duties, their own activities that they were responsible and liable for. The only difference to from them and today is we have a lot of legal laws that protect the publication of certain works. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's international law or national law. Every every country worldwide has legal laws. Okay. Now, the Knights of Templar were not held by the laws of the land. They were held by the values and the legal system of the church. Okay. The Hashshashin took it upon themselves in a fifth freedom aspect to uphold a code of honor and keep order. Basically, anybody who was doing wrong, like tyranny or whatever, they off with the head, so to speak. But in this case, it was more athame. Okay. And it was said that the Hashashin were highly trained in mysticism because of the fact that they appeared and disappeared just as quick, and all they left was corpses. Okay, they were highly feared. Masonry basically hid behind politics. They hid behind governments and laws and corporational type activity. They only did what was in the necessary benefit of themselves. And it's interesting because even today we see the creeds, the codes that you live by. And paganism in Wicca, if you're a part of a coven, you are bound by that legal system, okay, by that system. And if you go outside of that, then they refer to you as a warlock, somebody from the Welsh or Anglo-Saxon etymology, which means oathbreaker, betrayer, deceiver. Okay. And they don't really get into the backdrop of the etymology of a warlock as being a title given to somebody who has earned a position of power and wealth. Okay. And I'm not talking physical wealth. I'm talking the wealth of being a spiritual leader. Okay. And again, you can go into history and see this. And if you go into African Caribbean traditions, for an example, a medicine man or a witch, warlock, they were closely lived next to the king, the tribal king of that particular tribe. They were always consulted, always looked up to, and they were held in such high esteem. So it was kind of cool to see the difference between that and those of European traditions, where they lived either just on the outskirts of town. They were highly respected, but yet they were highly feared, like the Hexa or the Strega. Okay. And if they weren't living right on the outskirts of the village, then they were living out in the boondocks. And later they became associated with devils and demons through the witch trials. So there is evidence throughout history, not just archaeology and folklore traditions, that religious foundations have always been bound by the laws of the land. The laws of the land. Okay. So seeing this history and then seeing what's going on today, it's the persecution is still there. The communities are still attacking one another since the JCI took over. And you look at the Ten Commandments, okay, just out of an example. The Christians tend to go for the Ten Commandments and they always revert back to them, but yet they themselves break these very embodiments, these creeds, these codes, these mandates. So you got groups out there that will either treat you nice, they will, as long as you're going by their way, but as soon as you get a mind of your own within a state of, say, objective thinking, then you become the enemy. You become that warlock etymology again. Okay? You become, well, demonized, basically. You become associated with demons and devils. And so, I mean, when you look at, say, the Parliament law of Europe, the Parliament law is basically a law that surrounds fraud and fraudulent activities such as plagiarism, basic infringements of somebody's rights, and the acts of business and corporation type stuff, which here in the U.S. would be the Ramsey law. It's basically the equivalent of the Ramsey law in that factor, which gives the business the right to limit, what you're able to wear and what you can reveal, type thing. It's that creative conduct. But if you get into the Constitution, the American Constitution, then you see what makes up an established religion. And that basically is broken down into three aspects. You have um, a foundation, a following, and doctrine. So, in this point, if you go underneath religious land use and personalized religious acts, then it comes down to the fact that no individual, sect, organization, or assembly has the right to limit or deny another's religion. So then we can go into the blue law. We can go into the 1960s. Was it the 1963, which was updated in 90 back in 67, and then again in 69, and has been updated since then. I think the last time was in 2011, 2000. I want to say it was under Clinton and again under Trump, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, the 1967 Civil Rights Act, when you get underneath the titles VI and VII, you'll see where individuals who have published works or has a religious status quo, okay, they are protected by the legal system. Okay, this means that if you published works, say books, for an example, and somebody takes that information from a book and then doesn't give credit where it's due, or then it becomes an infringement. If you take that knowledge and you go out and you basically call it your own, it's theft of unauthorized taking, number one, and number two, it becomes plagiarism. Okay, so you've got a lot of different laws that play into an effect. So anytime you get a religious war going on between, say, for example, the JCI and Balg, for an example, or that of, say, the witch persecutions, or you get the community divided and a hair across one side's ass, and then on the other hand, you have somebody being objective and saying, "Hey, this is the legal law. This is our property." Someone's always going to get a hair across their ass and get butthurt over it. So, and I find that a lot of people, they don't become objective. They tend to become emotional. They tend to become a part of the herd conformity, kind of joining in and going, "Oh my god, this happened. This is a cult, or this is the occult, or you know, this person's right, this person's wrong," and you go to inquire, and they revert to you to somebody else, and it's like this becomes a third party at this point. But when you've already had dealings with that individual and they fail to support their their claims, guess what? It becomes null and void, and that person becomes obsolete. Okay? It comes about proof, it becomes about fact. Okay? And this is why it's important to know your history. It is important to know what you're talking about. And as a practicing necromancer and warlock, I can tell you that the best thing I've ever done is backed up what I preached. I give you numerous sources. I give you numerous avenues to explore based off my own personal experience, my own personal studies of any given topic that I've been studying, practicing, and so forth. And the second, therefore, backing up what you preach is always a good thing. Second of all, make yourself available to the public. You know what I'm saying? Because as ministers and as witches and warlocks, a lot of times people forget that you are seen as an elder of the communities, okay, of your community. It doesn't matter if you're into African Caribbean or European traditions. It does not matter if you're into Western or Eastern philosophies. These are limiters, basically. This is just an excuse not to do your homework, not to practice and to step up and do your responsibilities as a practitioner of said creeds and craft. So, this particular individual that was posted yesterday, it crossed my desk yesterday, and the individual basically stole material from a particular group and tried to pass it off as their own. They didn't they didn't really give, far as I can tell, just from what I've seen, and that's all I can do is talk about what I've seen, is they did not come out and say, "Hey, you know, I got to give this group credit because this belongs to them." Therefore, legally speaking, it becomes an infringement at that point. Whereas if they'd actually taken the the information and passed it off as their own, then it would become plagiarism. Either way, this, according to the Parliament law, which is European law, by the way, Welsh, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, it's actually throughout the Europe, is it is fraudulent activity. So if somebody, say for an example, it gets notified and they become emotional about it, it basically you're embarrassed because you got caught with your britches down. And you can attack this, that, and whatever, but in reality, the law of the land stands, and it's been this way for hundreds of thousands of years. And as I pointed out, every portion of the world, going as far back as Paleolithic times, had their own creeds, had their own laws, their own perceptions of sorcery, be it a coven law, the law of a coven, or the religious foundation, secret society, even. Either way you look at it, it is there. So, as a practitioner, you can become an emotional being if you wish, but it would be better to consult the spirits. It would be better to do what I do. And for an example, just out of an example, is last night I had this overwhelming urge after I'd done this pact and saw this. Even I got like, what the hell's wrong with people? You know, why did you not give this group credit? Why did you not do this? It's easy to lose yourself in the dogma of the world. But you got to remember, as witches and warlocks, we're not a part of the world. We're set aside from the world, and there's a reason for that. We're the keepers of the secrets. We're the keepers of the knowledge, and it's always been this way. Be it healing, be it spiritual counseling, being ministers, clergymen, and women. It does not matter. There's a wide selection of this. So when we get under this, it's more a part of the creed that you follow. Okay? If you're a part of a coven, you belong to that coven. The laws of that coven stand. If you are solitary, cool. You know, Bocor's a solitary, Marimberos a solitary. Hell, I'm a solitary practitioner. Less stress, less um, foundation on this. So I went to the spirits of the cemetery and I just laid it all out there. You know, I laid it all out there. And even though there was this blanket of darkness over the cemetery, it was fascinating to see. All of a sudden I turned around and it was just like everything just lightened up. It was like it brightened right up. Like you had gotten that negativity, that clout off your chest, so to speak, and you put your intent out there. You can do this in front of your altar. You can do this at a cemetery. You can do this at any spiritual location, be it Coliseum, be it a cemetery, be it crossroads in the woods. It could be an abandoned church. Wherever. It does not matter. But it comes down to the objective thinking. There's a reason why people always went to these keepers of secrets, the keepers of knowledge, the sacred knowledge, because they were always objective. And at this point, I'd like to bring up King Solomon from the Bible, the Christian Bible. A prime example. You have two bickering women claiming that a child was theirs. Okay, and this is a prime example of society today. Is people jump on the gravy train and they just keep going. They don't stop and think. They make it about themselves. They make it about the community, but not about the action that was taken. So King Solomon's I was a man of wisdom. So he basically ordered the death of the child. Okay, but Christians don't preach this. They don't talk about this aspect of the Old Testament. So here he says, well, put the kid to death. And all of a sudden, one woman said, no, 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 give it to her. Give my child to that one. I would rather give the child up than to see it dead. Okay. So as you can see, the wisdom behind it is he knew that the real mother would rather give up the child than to see it put to death. Therefore, revealing the truth. That's wisdom for you. Okay. So when we look at today's community, we look at what went down with Ball. We look at what went down with certain cults, if you wish. religious zealots? How many Christian ministers have been arrested and charged with sex offender registry, placed on sex offender registries? How many ministers today from the JCI have been literally embarrassed by the public eye, but nobody dares speak on that? But yet, one person reveals truth about fraudulent activity, and it becomes about the community. It becomes about the difference between a cult and the occult. Right? It's not about right and wrong anymore. It's about herd conformity. It's about dogma. So I think people need to take a step back and kind of remember, why did you get into the left hand path? Why did you get into sorcery? What creeds do you follow? You know what I'm saying? You have a movement right now that is trying to tear down other established norms. You got other groups out there trying to belittle others. Where's your wisdom? Where's your knowledge? You know what I'm saying? You got to look at this from a historical perspective, but you've also got to learn from history. And I think a lot of people don't do that. A man who does not learn from history is doomed to repeat it. Truth. I look back at my history and out of an example, and I look at where I used to be just a couple of years ago. So many people, I used to have people, when they attacked me, I would just lash out of emotion, instability. I would just degrade them. I would literally obliterate their world. Okay. A few of them petitioned for mercy. A few of them decided, hey, I'd rather be your friend than your enemy. You know, Alistair Knott, you know, a very well spoken spokesman for theistic Satanism, said, we live in a time where the pen is mightier than the sword. Truth. You can use words all day long to tear someone down. You can use words to destroy somebody's life and works. You can create drama and dogma all you want, but in the end of the day, does that make you better or worse? You see, when I look back at how far I've come just over the last couple of years, I pulled back from the world. I've concentrated more on my studies and my practices. Every so often, I will speak out on a topic that needs to be discussed because it's come across my attention more than once. You see, this is just one of three topics just in 3 years that have crossed my desk, so to speak. And I'm not one of those emotional types. I don't get emotional because it's better to control yourself, to limit yourself from an emotional perspective, to take that step back, reflect. And you know what? Just what I did last night, it revealed several truths. Something I had not heeded to gnosis wise the last couple of years that I went to the cemetery and performed the fasting and the rites that I've been doing. It revealed my own stupidity on that aspect. But it's also opened my eyes to the world. And even my own apprentice has come to me and said, hey, you know, I'm glad I'm no longer a part of the world. I see so much dogma, so much drama, so much undue stress that doesn't need to be there. So it's not just me. And it's funny because I've got people who come to me and they say, your creed is something that's one of the best. A lot of people don't back up what they preach. They make a lot of claims, a lot of, accusations. Even when you do put a lot of the things that would prove them to be false forth, people look beyond it. They deny it. So basically, it comes down to this: it's damned if you do, and damned if you don't. You take this war with between Russia and Ukraine. It's the biggest thing out there right now. Have we not seen this before? You have a strong government and a weak government. But then you got that militia that's in that guerrilla warfare. Putin basically thought that he would roll through that country and reclaim it for Russia. He was not prepared for the amount of resistance that he has received. His own countrymen has turned against him. Interesting, isn't it? Even his own soldiers have said, I don't want to be here. Then you have a weak government, like, say, for an example, Biden, getting in bed with his allies, the NATO, going, oh, we're going to put sanctions here, here, and here. We're going to limit him and strike at his finances. Do you really think that's going to stop him? Do you really think that that's going to hinder his plans? Because it is quite obvious that he has been planning this for years. For years. And for the record, I've seen the movies. I know how it's going to end. It always starts with Russia before going into other countries. And now they're petitioning China. And then you got the US going, don't get involved. You're getting NATO going, don't get involved. You're trying to drag things, other people into it. It's no different. Look at history. You take someone as powerful as Julius Caesar, master strategist, and Rome fell in a day. You look at the dark or black shamans of India. Genghis Khan, his foundation was destroyed by the Mongols. They were good at what they did. They were protectors of the people. The Knights of Templar, protectors of the people. The Hashshashin, destroyed by the Mongols, which is kind of ironic because nobody else was able to destroy them. But there's actually talks that they possibly survived in other forms. Could be. Where's the proof? You know what I'm saying? So look at it this way. Some of the greatest foundations, thought to be impenetrable, have been destroyed, taken down. Bog, the latest one. Big time organization. All of a sudden, massive implosion, massive fallout of its members. Yet in the murders in London, the BBC News outlet, the fact that they only stick to their members that they interview, those who are published, so to speak. That doesn't help the cause either, but it's there. You can be, to quote Patrick, excuse me, to quote Patrick Swayze from Roadhouse, you can be the biggest man in the world. Take out the knee, falls like a ton of bricks. Basically, House of Cards. Therefore, it is best to back up what you preach. I've had two individuals in the past couple of years that have claimed things. Two. And I've asked them for their proof. They failed to show it, but yet continuously claim it. You see all these hindrances. They keep going out there. And these people keep claiming it's you or a different organization or whatever. Where is your proof? Plain and simple. If you don't have the evidence to back it up and give multiple different proof, different sources to look into, then you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't even be talking on it. You just shouldn't be. You should just stay silent. It is better to remain silent than to get your ass in a sling. To quote a coworker of mine, there is a time to speak and a time not to. It's true. You see, I've had a couple of coworkers that's gotten hair across their ass. One, I pegged from the get go. And it was funny because this individual would come into the kitchen and just stand there for 10 minutes and then all of a sudden demand shit. So I looked at her one day and I said, "You got two hands, you got 2 feet. Get your ass over here and do it yourself. There's two of us in this kitchen and we're both busy." She ran to upper management and that backfired on her because number one, it's on camera. Number two, shows a history on this individual's part. Now, the second individual got a hair across their ass because of a joke. Just a joke. Simple thing, humor. And it became about the normal human stuff. Sexual orientation or, political aspects, you name it, it's always there. And it's always reverted back to that. People are so hung up on the worldly applications that they fail to observe as a third party. And you really need to take that step back. You need to look at it. It would be like meditating. If your meditations revolve around quieting your mind and all of a sudden you get that random thought that comes into your head, instead of acknowledging that thought and communing with that thought, why don't you observe that thought? Just take that step back and just kind of observe it as a third person. On one hand, you have that thought, on the other hand, you have you. And then you have your perspective. Same exact thing. So when you get into the laws of the land, legalism, every country has their own laws, their own perspectives of what's right and wrong from a moral or immoral application. You go into different perspectives of separation. Same thing. But people don't go into a classification or even discuss from a wide range of sources. Christians stick to the New Testament and they only stick to three perspectives when they preach. Not joking, you can check that out by yourself. And go to different churches and you'll literally see that aspect. I saw that years ago when I was studying to become a minister. And then you have pagans and Wiccans that will be all friendly until you step on toes, and then it's, oh my God, is this a warlock? You know, you got the African Caribbean systems that are trying to control their own gnosis. Well, you have to be initiated. Really? Then how do you explain the Bokor, the Capilata, the Miramberos, even? You know, how do you explain the self-initiation rites that you put forth? Hypocrisy and duality right there. But that's why you need to be objective, you know? You need to be objective. Sit back. Don't allow yourself to be drug into to drama. Don't allow yourself to be drug into a war zone because the issue is not yours, it's theirs. Let them duke it out. If somebody has an issue with, say, for an example, let's say, for an example, you take BBC News and Bulk. Okay. BBC News obviously has an agenda against Bulk. Okay. Let those two duke it out. Don't get involved with it. You know, if you have an issue with, say, the Cabal or the Temple of Ascending Flame, you know, then bring it up with them. You know what I'm saying? Don't take it out on social media and go, "Hey, this is what's going on. Oh my God, this was shared, this was said, that was said." Because before you know it, the story changes. Before you know it, things get misstrued, so to speak. Things get misinterpreted, and before long, you have everybody up in an uproar. It would be like, say, for an example, a 13-year-old drawing a gun on a police officer, and that officer shooting that kid, putting the kid down. The kid dies. It no longer becomes about the actions and the choices of that minor. No. And what the officer had to do to defend himself from the public. No. Now it becomes about race. Now it becomes about the community. Now it becomes an uproar, a riot, demanding blood. The chum is in the water. The sharks are swarming. Welcome to the worldly dogma. Now you see why, as practitioners, we are not a part of the world. We practice sorcery. We spend our time evolving through knowledge, through wisdom, through the arcane, and through the practices of our chosen profession. We are the ones that have one foot in the spiritual nexus and the other in the world. We are the intermediaries between the spiritual and the living, the dead and the living. We are the ones that everybody goes to, including the JCI. How ironic is that? Because their stuff don't work, but yet they come to us when all things fail. Why? It's because they're too wrapped up. You see, the forefathers at the beginning had so much power. They had conviction. Then it became about separation, segregation. And today it's about power. It's not about spiritualism. It's not even about money. It's not even about that spirit. It's not about the path of the religion. It's about money. Who has it? Who doesn't? History has shown that this topic fits into so many things, so many different applications, just to this one topic. So why does history, mythology, and folklore say one thing, and yet humanity says something else? Doesn't matter what religious practice you are. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. It doesn't matter what sexual orientation you are. If you can't take something in a form of criticism, say for an example, a critique where, let's say for an example, you believe the etymology of oathbreaker, betrayer, deceiver, traitor. This is the definition of warlock from the etymology of Anglo-Saxon in Welsh. This is what most today go by. 99% go by this etymology. So take a moment and go into other regions of the world. In African Caribbean traditions, the caplata or bokor can easily become the mimbo or the hangan, the papa or mama, depending if you're into Haitian or Dominican Republican voodoo. The witch and warlock used to be equals. They were viewed as equals until the polytheistic and monotheistic age. So why do people want to stick to that one etymology? These practitioners have been known by many names depending on the region of the world. Sage, mage, necromancer, shaman, witch, warlock, brua, bruo, boko, bokor, membo, hangan, caprata, hexa, eshi, strega. This is going all the way back to the 6th century BC. Learn from history. Learn from history. Back it up with numerous sources. And always make yourself available to the public because you answer to the people, not to yourself. And if somebody has legal rights to a topic, why do you want to call them a cult? Why do you want to call them a criminal organization? Because you don't agree with it? Because you've been led to believe something that was not true? See, if you'd done your own homework, you wouldn't be embarrassed. You wouldn't have been caught with your britches down. More so, you probably won't be charged with accessory to a crime. There's a difference between spiritual laws and physical law. Do your homework. True, Justine, very true. High resolution nakedness is best practiced in person and not online. Exactly. If you have a problem with someone or an organization, take it up with them. Very, very true. Yeah, I see Naked HD is back. And Justin. Why are you always erasing your messages? Tells me you got something to hide, but also doesn't look good for you. So if you got nothing to say and you don't have the conviction to keep it on the screen, take it the fuck off and don't say a goddamn thing. Plain and simple. It's the way I see it. Kyle, welcome to the channel. Non compos mentis telmage. Welcome to the channel. I have been reading it, Justin. Why do you think I started with Naked HD XYZ before going to Justin and Kyle? And now back to you. So, anyways, so I wanted to come on here and kind of just let you know this is what's been going on. I've been doing a lot of rituals, a lot of rites, been doing a lot of studying this week, and had a lot of good experience, especially in the cemetery, and more so how it put into perception. How should I say this? It put it into perspective. The difference between being a practitioner and being a part of the world. You just can't be one or the other. Because if you lean too far on one side, you become off balance. If you spend more time in the other, you become an outcast of society. But if you stay in between and you find that healthy balance, then you become something far dangerous, far more potent. And history has shown what happens to people who become dangerous through knowledge, through proof that their magics and sorceries work. Okay, you look at everybody. Why do you think the witch trials in the burning times took place? Why do you think tyranny has taken place throughout history? And why a greater force has risen up to put that power down? It is the sortation of alchemy process. Okay, the a while back I was doing a live reading and I realized that this one tarot card deck, this one of Ian Daniels, had this thing that looked like an anchor. The arrow that's pointing up with the line like so. And I finally found the symbol and what it stood for. And basically, this is the adding of water, a softer substance, a form of liquidness to something of solidness to make it softer. The alchemical process, if you will. And if you think about it in this way, the alchemical process of either black alchemy or alchemy in general is about changing things, taking something from one context and making it into something completely different. So in this case, when we look at alchemy, the knowledge is the world versus spiritualism. Okay. So if we look at it this way, and you take that step back and you look at it from an objective third party perspective, you know the laws, you know um, your craft, Okay, you know what you're practicing, and you have a strong foundation under you to where your brand has been built off knowledge, wisdom, and education, but also what you represent. Okay, then you are literally taking the alchemical approach and you're changing the the worldly view. Okay, in this case, you're taking solid matter. Okay, and you're taking that liquid and you're pouring it in there, this consecrated liquid, and you're making it into mush. That's what dogma is. That's what rumors are. That's what accusations are. You're making something into mush, and those lines become blurred. So if you take that step back, you're doing, you're taking what's being said, you're taking what's been said, what's been happening on all fronts, you're breaking it down into its most simplistic applications, and you're taking lead and creating gold. Okay, look at the philosopher's stone. That's basically what it is. And if you go into Hinduism or Buddhism, they have a seal that is basically a circle with a triangle or with a square inside of it, and you got the two gods, one on either side. In this application, you can say, let's look at it from, like, say, Satan on one side and Jehovah on the other. You're in the middle. It's that tug of war effect on the choices you make. Choice has always been in your hands. Believe a lie or do your own homework. That's what it comes down to. Thank you, Kyle. I'm glad you like what I put forth, and hope you learn that you've learned a lot from it. And that's actually true because we've all been new to a path. I've only been practicing necromancy on a full-time basis for about 3 years, dedicated as a devout. Okay, so I'm actually new to necromancy. I'm by far a lick, you know, but I am a student of necromancy now. And more so, I've been a Satanist for 33 years. I've gone from spiritual to theistic to traditional Satanism. I've studied vampiric practices. I've studied witchcraft from various different perspectives. But it's only through recent times, the last 4 years, that I've really hunkered down and kind of pulled back and to the point where it's more about me and what I have to offer to the world. It's not about numbers, it's not about ego, it's not about popularity. It is about the education, and that's what it comes down to because without education, how is one to learn? So many people and groups out there are saying, well, if you're not a part of our organization, then we're not going to teach you. I can tell you from personal experience that the organization that I'm associated with right now, that I'm studying under and through, they let you form your own ideals. They let you guide, the spirits guide you. Where your magic takes you is where you're going to be going. Okay? So what you're practicing and what you're doing, you're in charge of your own success or your own defeat, so to speak. And that's the best way I can tell you. It's they don't sit there and go, "You will study my way or there's the highway." No. That's what I like about this group, this religious foundation, is because they literally let you study your way. They will guide you, they will teach you, if need be, but they let you, for the most part, do you. Okay. And I like that because I've always been that way. That's true. I concur with that, Kyle. And that's why I've always, since I formed the Order of the Black Thorn, and I shut that order down about a year or so ago. But I always take two creeds, two laws, and I made it a part of my system. Whatever you preach, always back it up and always make yourself available to the public, because it is very important to remember these two statues, these two creeds. It is about you. It is about your sorcery, yes, but more so, it's about your growth, your ascension. It is about your brand that you're putting forth, because eventually you're going to want to go out and make a brand for yourself. This means starting a page for, let's say, phylacteries, such as amulets, talismans, getting into oils and oleums and herbalism, and selling product. You know, everybody seems to be doing this these days. It's become a fad. It's become a brand, basically, but everybody's doing it. It's been done to death. But it's also called consumerism. Especially in today's world, you kind of need that. Or you can be like a few of us and actually have a job. You know what I'm saying? You work and you practice. Do I sell my services? Yes, but I'm not flaunting it. I don't flaunt my stuff out there like that. It's just not my style. But the thing is that when you realize that your destiny is in your own hands, and it's better to choose what you're about, then you can form that creed. Then you can form that path working, make it a lifestyle, build on it, build upon that apotheosis, that knowledge, that gnosis that the spirits and the gods are teaching you. It doesn't matter if you're working with demons. It doesn't matter if you're working with the jinn, the devi, the orisha, the loa, or even the individual pantheon gods that are out there. It's up to you to set these goals. It is up to you to put forth that knowledge. It is up to you to study, to practice, to evolve. And I found that education is the best way. I didn't want my foundation or my brand to be like these others. I wanted it to be unique to itself. I wanted it to be something that the community can learn from. Okay. I'm not perfect by a long shot. I've made my fair share of mistakes, and I've made my fair share of I've had my fair share of failures throughout my career as a sorcerer. As a Satanist, I've spent I don't know how much money traversing this country from just traveling. I pissed away thousands of dollars that I could have saved up and bought a house. Now that I have a family of my own, I have to save up and I have to scrounge through this, but I'm also working with the gods and the spirits that I'm working with to not only fulfill my oath to them, but also to my family. So there's a lot of responsibilities that play into one's practice. And yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself on that, on pissing away all that money over the years, but I look at it as a learning experience. And if I can teach somebody that you don't have to go here and there and spend all this money on crap that's not going to get you anywhere, when only a few sources can really benefit you. A while back, I did a series on Christopher Penziak. Okay. I did a video on that, and his books, the Temple series, is basically one of the greatest things that you can have, because he speaks from various different sources of pagan, Wiccan, and shamanistic perspectives. More so, if you get into Hans Holzer's work, which is an older practitioner, he literally speaks from multiple different perspectives, from a beneficial reality of a practitioner's life and career within the physical realm. Say, for an example, he in I want to say it's chapter 15 of the book Witches. He calls on a journalist who is also a neo-pagan out of London. He speaks on a man who, in his boyhood, grew up kind of an odd duck, so to speak, because he was into necromancy, devil worship, and practicing witchcraft mm, from a psychological, perspective of hanging out in cemeteries rather than playing baseball or street ball or whatever the hell they called it back in the day. In the cities, the big cities like Boston and Massachusetts, or Brooklyn, New York, or wherever. You know, and this guy literally he got a job at a funeral home. He's now a head of a psychiatric department and so forth. And it's very cool to see just how your practices play into the careers that you choose. You take me for an example. I'm actually going back to school for thanatology. A lot of people, especially in the medical field, have no freaking clue what this is. Even those who teach at colleges have never heard of thanatology. I'm the one educating them, which is hilarious. But you see it. The education is what matters. This is what helps you grow. It is what helps you evolve. Okay? There's an old expression in the Witch's Creed: to know, to will, and to dare. Okay? Not just to keep silent. You don't have to go out and say, okay, this is what I'm practicing. This is how I do my rites and rituals. No, you don't want to do that because then it defies what you're trying to create. But from an educational perspective, if you know yourself and you know your craft, then you can dare to go out and actually practice it, experiment with it, and study it, and then to go forth and actually share your knowledge with the world for those who want to learn, those who want to grow. Okay. And again, it has nothing to do with the ego, it has nothing to do with popularity or numbers. It is simple facts throughout history, throughout mythology, throughout folklore, throughout archaeology. And you'd be surprised because I tell my clients and I tell my apprentices all the time, okay? If a spirit shows you something, if somebody comes to you and says, this is what I recommend, do your homework first. Okay? Delve into that particular topic. And if it lines up with folklore, mythology and history, then it's all good. But if it doesn't, why do you want to get involved with it? Because it's most likely corrupted. It is most likely taken into a corrupted context where it's personalized, it's become dogma, it's become about religious, dominance. It's become about how should I say this, segregation even. And if you look at it, even Christianity in the main JCI body is in complete segregation. It's nothing more than pointing fingers and saying you're wrong, we're right. You got Baptists trying to convert apostolics, apostolics trying to convert Jehovah Witnesses, Catholics sitting there going, we're the originals. You know what I'm saying? It becomes prideful. It becomes haughtiness at that point, and it's pointless posturing. What's the point of getting into it? You know what I'm saying? If you want to learn, you want to grow, then delve into the education because that's where you're going to benefit the most from. And that's the way I look at it. That's just my personal experience. And like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. But it doesn't mean I can't work towards perfection through my own rites and rituals and through working with the spirits and applying this stuff to my own life and to my family's life. It's just the way it is. So I've got nothing towards anyone. I really don't. I could care less what people do, but if you make it personal, then yeah, I'm gonna have an issue with you. But for the most part, I could care less what the world does because I've made my stance quite clear. For me, it's about knowledge, it's about education, it's about my personal growth in my studies and what I'm trying to do for you. If I can make your lives a little easier to where you don't have to do the same mistakes that I've made over the years, then cool. If you like what I do, cool. If not, that's cool too. We all have our own path. We have our own likes and dislikes. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way it is. And I concur, Justin. And I actually, come to think about it, I actually made a post last night on Facebook. Actually, technically, it was early this morning because I was still up until about 3 a.m. And it took me a while to go to sleep. And I posted on Facebook, I said, how did I put it? There's a reason why you need to keep your inner circle small because if you let it get too big, you can't control what dogma comes across your view. And the reason for that is because of this. There's so much dogma, so much chaotic chaos out there that you get everybody posturing, everybody trying to take a how should I say this? Think of the gold rush for an example. Everybody was trying to make a mark on society. Everybody was trying to move up the ranks. Even today, it's all about money. It's about power, fame, and fortune. And it's like, no, I don't want nothing to do with that. I really don't. So, this is why I teach the way I do. This is why I put forth content that will help you grow. And I do it from an educational perspective. Maybe that's because I'm a teacher. I don't know. Maybe I've learned more than I thought I had from Zaniel, the teacher of witchcraft, from the book of the Grimoire of Armadale. You know, he's a good teacher. I'd recommend looking into him and learning from him. There's one other, but I'm not going to get into him. I'm not permitted to. So, at least at this time, I'd have to go and ask permission and from my elders to even begin to speak on that spirit. So that's why I'm just going to leave it like that. So, but I want to thank everybody for jumping on here with me. I've said my piece, and I hope you've learned a lot. I hope that this has been enlightening and educational. And like I said, if you like what you see, feel free to hit that subscribe button, or what do they call that? The notification button. It's up to you, or not. I know some of you are you know come back every so often, and I get a wide range of influx of followers, which is kind of fun, which is kind of cool to see because everybody likes something, whereas others have opinions against something else. So I mean, it's like I said, it's all good. Do or don't, that's your choice. All right. Have a good day, and until next time. All right. I'm out.